restaurant in Glyfada, on the edge of a promenade in this quiet Athens suburban. A waiter is busy laying the tables for lunch. It's Saturday morning, shortly before midday, and the sun is breaking through the clouds as a steady stream of people stroll by the seafronts. Glyfada is only a 20-minute drive from downtown Athens, but a relaxed pace of life feels a million miles away from the hustle and bustle of the Greek capital. The town has been described as Athens' best-kept secret, and it's easy to see why George Baldock was attracted to the idea of living here after swapping Sheffield United for Panathinaikos in the summer. His apartment is directly opposite Astakos, only a stone's throw from the beach. Tragically, it is also where he was found dead last week. Aged 31, Baldock drowned in his swimming pool in circumstances that remain a mystery. Police have ruled out any criminal activity, but an investigation into exactly what happened on Wednesday, October the 9th is ongoing and unlikely to end anytime soon. Toxicology reports could take as long as 45 days to come, meaning that there are more questions than answers right now. His death has shaken people in Greece, where the profound sense of sadness among those who spent time in Baldock's company reflects the way that he connected with a country that became his adopted home. Born in England and a product of the MK Dons Academy, Baldock qualified to play for Greece through his late grandmother. He won 12 caps since making his debut in June 2022 and cherished every single one of them. There could and surely would have been more. Instead, the doorway to his apartment in Glyfada is filled with flowers and messages that tell a very different story. His passing is a heartbreaking story in so many ways, and it's impossible to imagine what Baldock's family have been going through over the past week. Baldock's teammates, past and present, have found it difficult enough. Listening to them talking about him is extremely moving and at times upsetting. There is a mixture of pain, anguish and disbelief in their voices as they try to make sense of a story that makes no sense at all. Several of them attempted to call Baldock that Wednesday night because they simply refused to accept the awful news that they had heard. Some still wake up in the morning waiting for the call that never comes. So, let's explain what's happened in the days leading up, the aftermath, and on that tragic night where George Baldock was found mysteriously dead in his apartment. Thank you to The Athletic for this idea and article. I will put a link in the description to it. Also, a disclaimer that this is just for relaxation and educational purposes. I'm not trying to gain views of his death or anything like that. Simply, I'm here to explain the story that has shook the football world. So, let's take a look at the tragic death of George Baldock. On the Sunday evening before last, Sotris Soucheleris was waiting outside the VIP gate at the Olympic Stadium in Athens. Panathinaikos had drawn 0-0 at home against Olympiakos, and Soucheleris, who is a journalist, was hoping to speak to one or two of the players. A couple of them had politely declined when he saw Baldock approaching. "George, can you answer a couple of questions, please?" he asked, hoping rather than expecting Baldock would stop. "Of course, mate," Baldock replied. Soucheleris quickly set up his camera and pressed record. He remembers thinking that Baldock looked a little tired as well as disappointed that Panathinaikos didn't win, but there was also a lot of positivity in Baldock's voice when he talked about his performance and the future. I thanked him, shook his hands, and said goodbye, Suchleris said. It was the first and last time we spoke. Although Baldock made just 4 appearances for Panathinaikos and only signed in July, he was already a hugely popular figure inside and outside the club. Some of the Panathinaikos squad had known him for a couple of years, ever since he was called up to the Greece squad for the first time. Others immediately warmed to a man who always had a smile on his face, loved telling a story, and went out of his way to talk to people. The day he walked into our pre-season camp in Austria, he sat next to me at the lunch table, and I just felt his English energy, Eric Palmer-Brown said, a teammate of Baldock's at Panathinaikos. I've been in England before with Manchester City, so I knew I would click on with his banter, but he just made everything easier. He was an open book, just so honest with everyone around him. He was able to bring a room together. If you weren't in the conversation, say you had just walked in, he would throw a little joke out there to make you feel welcome. Obviously, we have a bunch of different nationalities at the club, and to see him mix in with any group of people was such a special thing. Baldock got on well with all the players at Panathinaikos, but he was close to 5 or 6 teammates in particular. Palmer Brown, who spent time at the apartment in Glyfada playing Uno with Baldock and his fiancée and meeting his mother-in-law-to-be. Iceland international Order Magnusson was another very close to George. A former Bristol City player, Magnusson had played against Baldock in the Championship in England and was delighted when he heard that he was signing for Panathinaikos. He rated Baldock as a player, and he knew people in England who spoke highly of him as a teammate. In the early days at Panathinaikos, when Baldock was still trying to sort out a lease car, Magnusson drove him back and forth to training, and also helped his family settle into their apartment in Glyfada. The two of them were the same age, and both had young children, but Baldock was operating on a totally different body clock to Magnusson. He was the type of player who went to sleep early and woke up early. He had so much energy, Magnusson says, laughing about the phone calls he would receive before his alarm had even gone off. On Wednesday morning last week, Baldock reported for treatment after picking up a slight knock in the Olympiakos game. Magnusson, who has been recovering from a cruciate knee ligament injury, remembers Baldock walking into the physio's room and giving him a warm embrace. After receiving treatment, Baldock did some light running outside in the sunshine. Palmer Brown and the Swedish forward Alexander Chermichev had already finished training and sat on the grass watching Baldock before all 3 got in the sauna together. It was his son's birthday, Palmer Brown explains, and we always have this inside joke about Father of the Year. I don't have a kid, but Baldock and Chermichev do, so we were like, congratulations Father of the Year because of the birthday. He said, yeah, but it's a bit bad I'm not there, and that's when he told us he had a flight home the next day after training. Palmer Brown paused for a moment. That's my last memory of him. After showering, Baldock got a lift back to his apartment with Bart Schenkelveld, a 33-year-old Dutchman, who was one of the last people to have any contact with him. Trying to work out exactly what happened next is like putting together a jigsaw puzzle that has some of the pieces missing. All that can be said, for sure, is that later in the evening, Baldock's fiancée Annabelle became concerned that something wasn't right. she had been unable to get in touch with her partner and reached out for help. She called the landlord and asked him to go to the property. Andres Flacopoulos, who had broken the rental agreement for the apartment with Baldock in the summer. Nothing could have prepared anyone for what followed. When he went there, he found Baldock drowned in the pool. According to the police, they received a phone call from the landlord shortly after 10 p.m. on Wednesday. The first officers on the scene at the apartment removed Baldock from the pool to check whether he was still alive. It was clear, however, that he had been in the water for some time. When an ambulance arrived shortly afterwards, medics performed their own checks, and Baldock was pronounced dead at 10:25 p.m. The Panathinaikos players quickly found out the news. I got a call from Magnuson asking if I knew his fiance's number because I'd hung out with him, Palmer Brown said. I asked why, and he told me. I was like, there's no way. What do you mean he drowned? What are you saying? I was lost, really confused. Magnuson said he was going to the property now. He lived pretty close to Baldock. I said I'm gonna call Baldock, so I phoned him. Then I called Magnuson again when he got there, and then I heard it in his voice. It would soon be public knowledge. At 11:10 p.m, the Greek newspaper Protofema reported online that there had been an incident involving Baldock in a pool. Within 10 minutes, the story had been updated to say that Baldock was dead. The Greece players, who were training on Wednesday night at Wembley in preparation for their Nations League game against England the following day, returned to the dressing room to see a flurry of messages and missed calls on their phones. Some of Baldock's teammates responded, almost angrily, to the people who were contacting them, assuming that there was a terrible misunderstanding. Others convinced themselves that Baldock had just fainted and that everything would be fine. Ollie McBurney, a former Sheffield United teammate, was so certain that it wasn't true that he did the same thing as Palmer Brown and called Baldock, expecting him to answer. When Baldock's phone rang out, he sent a few messages and then called John Lundstrom, another ex-Sheffield United player, and in McBurney words, probably George's best friend. Lundstrom, who had spoken to Baldock early in the day, was totally in the dark too. Soon, though, the people who were sure to know the truth confirmed the worst possible news. A number of Panathinaikos staff and players, Shekomveld, Magnuson, Seka, Ruben Perez and Tony Volhenna among them, went to Baldock's apartment that evening and waited outside. A team of detectives from 2 separate police units were called in to take fingerprints and check for any other DNA. But there was no evidence of any disturbance or signs that anything had been tampered with inside the property, and a forensic scientist quickly ruled out any criminal activity. A bottle of some description was found at the apartment, as well as 2 glasses, but the significance of either is unclear, and also easy to overanalyze without any context. Several news outlets in Greece reported that alcohol had been found at the property, but police have neither confirmed nor denied that is the case. Football was the last thing on anyone's mind at Panathinaikos. Thursday's training session was cancelled, but the club still wanted everyone to report to the training grounds. Diego Alonso, the head coach, and Giannis Papadimitriou, the club's technical director, addressed all the staff and players in a meeting that lasted no longer than 10 minutes. People were tearful, still in a state of shock, struggling to process what had happened. But the Panathinaikos players were told to forget about football, go home, spend time with their families, and hug their loved ones. By that stage, there was already anger among staff and players about some of the media coverage of Baldock's death. turning the death of a 31-year-old man into a story about the size and cost of his apartments. ANT1 TV, a free-to-air TV channel in Greece, also used footage of Baldock's apartment that had been sent in by a viewer and filmed with a drone in the wake of his death. The video showed the area around the swimming pool where everything remained untouched from the night before. All the while, the show's presenter talked about property's views, the number of rooms, and its value. The tone of that whole segment of the show, not to mention the use of the drone footage, felt deeply insensitive. It upset people at Panathinaikos as well as members of the Greece national team and prompted a public backlash, with an apology issued 24 hours later. By that point, Tassos Bakasitas, the Panathinaikos and national team captain, had already publicly called out some of the Greek media for disrespecting Baldock's family and telling lies. Bakasitas made those comments after a night of high emotion at Wembley, where Greece pulled off one of the greatest victories in their history in the most difficult circumstances imaginable. The fact that the England game went ahead seems remarkable, bearing in mind Baldock's relationship with the Greece players. Baldock had played for his country as recently as March in the Euro 2024 playoff tie against Georgia, and all but three of Greece's matchday squads for the England game had been with Baldock at one point or another with the national team. Those numbers only tell part of the story though. Baldock, and this really shines through when you talk to the Greece players, connected with his teammates on a human level. The Greek players didn't just like George, they loved him. Amid so many difficult conversations in London after Baldock's death, Greece approached UEFA verbally to ask about the England fixture being moved to another date. Although there were huge questions about the players being in the right frame of mind, Greece's primary reason for wanting the match to be cancelled was a mark of respect for Baldock. UEFA's decision to press ahead with the game is not something that the Greece Football Federation wishes to spend any time discussing now, purely because that debate overlooks the only thing that really matters to them. At around 7:30 p.m. on Thursday, shortly before the game kicked off, the Baldock family released a statement. "We are heartbroken with the sudden passing of our beloved George. We can confirm that a post-mortem examination has found that George tragically drowned while swimming in the pool at his home in Glyfada, Athens. George, you are the most special father, fiancé, son, brother, uncle, friend, teammate and person. Your enthusiasm and infectious personality brought so much love to those who were fortunate enough to know you, and those that adored you from the stands. We will forever cherish the special memories we have of you, and you will continue to live on, our beautiful son. You are due to fly home today for us to celebrate our son's first birthday together, but instead we mourn your loss." The Greece players were unaware of these deeply moving words until later in the evening, when they returned to the dressing room at Wembley with tears in their eyes and Baldock's number 2 shirt in their hands, after parading it around the pitch at the final whistle of a dramatic 2-1 win. It was a perfect tribute. 3 days later, Greece followed that up with another emotional win, this time against the Republic of Ireland in Athens, where Baldock's name reverberated around the stadium before kick-off after a beautiful montage was played on the screen while the players gathered in the centre circle. Bakasitas kissed and removed his black armband after opening the scoring, and Petros Mantalos did the same when he added a second. Now, how on earth do Panathinaikos return to playing football and get through the rest of the season? That's a very good question, because it's been 2 days of training since, and it feels nowhere near the same, says Palmer Brown. understandable that some players are still struggling to focus on football. Palmer Brown admits he is struggling to sleep at night when his thoughts just run. He also keeps thinking about Baldock's fiancée. I haven't even found the words to reach out to her, he says. I know I need to say something, I just don't know what to say. Some moments are more difficult than others and bring home the sobering reality of what has happened. George sat between me and Eric in the dressing room, Magnuson said. I came in for treatment the day after the meeting with the players, and at 10 o'clock in the morning I saw his stuff and his name above his locker. His shoes, his flip-flops were all there next to me. Then, at 12 o'clock, I saw nothing. Everything was gone. None of this is easy for anyone. Coaches and players, past and present, are going through emotions they have never experienced in football before. Chris Wilder, the Sheffield United manager, gave a moving interview on the club website when he talked about feeling stunned, devastated and numb. At the same time, Wilder expressed concern that his own sadness felt selfish in the context of what the Baldock family are going through. Panathinaikos have vowed to be there for the Baldock family. The club's owner, Giannis Alafouzou, feels a personal responsibility and a duty of care to support them, not just now but in the long term. Conversations are ongoing in relation to Baldock's 3-year contract, something that is more complex than people might imagine. And there is also the possibility of a charity game too, but these things will dealt later down the line. In the meantime, Panathinaikos have a football match to play on Sunday, followed by Chelsea at home in the Conference League 4 days later. Magnuson is desperate to be back out on the pitch too. I haven't played 1 minute this season because of injury, but I really want to play the next game, just for George. I'm ready for that, he says. I want to show George that we did it for him, and not just one game, but for the rest of the season, and for years to come. So there we go. That is the tragic story of George Baldock. A bit of a sad video, this one, but I felt it was necessary to cover. Just really, really sad news. When I heard it, personally, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. Dying like that as well is just, so sad. And my thoughts go out to his family. And we'll hopefully, Panathinaikos can have an amazing season, because, as Magnus said, I'm sure that's what George would have wanted. But it's truly sad, and these moments always just make you think of your loved ones, and you never know what can happen. But look, a bit of a sad one, as I said. However, I hope you guys have enjoyed and found it relaxing or educational, at least in terms of